I was born in Scotland, near Knaresborough, and when I was 2, my parents decided that they would come here to live. I don't remember much about coming because I was only little. There's a lot I can't remember, and probably there's some I don't want to remember. And we had some fun. My mum took it in, workmen came to stay, lodgers, and we made sandwiches. We had lots of social events, really. I didn't need to go out to meet my friends because my friends would come here when they were old enough to come here. But before that, we had parties. My mum did parties for us. But I do remember Freebooter won the Grand National in 1950. They used to train. The Bobby Renton's stables were at Oxclose, and Freebooter was one of his. And they used to ride through the village training. We had, I don't know how many horses, probably 6 would go through. And I always had the impression that Freebooter did come into the pub, into the tap room. But whether that's just a fancy or not, I'm not sure. We had an orchard at the back where I could play, and a large swing where all the kids could sit on the swing that was made from railway sleeper. I did the food. My mother was an extremely good cook. I helped waitress. I learned how to set the tables and serve the food, and I did serve in the bar. And the bar was mahogany bar, and it started about here, came out and down to here. There were cupboards and shelves there, a door there into the kitchen. Someone made some chips one night, put the chip pan on and burnt the larder down, and all the mahogany counter got burnt down as well. So that was when it was changed to move the counter to here. And this has changed twice. This was the cellar where we had 2 raised pieces for the round barrels to go on. And the door for the cellar was that corner that went into the yard. This is the tap room, and we had a dartboard there, a fire there, and there were seats all the way around the room with round tables. Here, this was the lounge. Did most of my homework in here. This is when I first started going out with Ron. And then the lounge, we came out, and there's a doorway there into this dining room. And they had an organ, and there were some extremely good singers, and they had a lovely time singing and playing bingo. Later on they had the bingo, but the music room was very, very successful. It was really good. It was always busy then.
Well, it was quite a thriving pub in one respect. It had a very vibrant tap room. We had a lot of locals coming in because due to the fact that a lot of them still worked in the village. And so lunchtime and early evenings, were quite good. And we had a very good early doors in the lounge bar. Of course, there were quite a lot of retired army types and wool people, and they used to come in for their little session for an hour. In the tap room, they ran all sorts of things. We took bets on a Saturday, lunchtime, and someone took them into Ripon. Always having sweepstakes and stuff. And of course they had a darts team and darts suppers. I did do the odd shooter's lunch in the season, and we used to do steak and chips and peas, usual thing, on a Saturday night in winter. I had very small children. I moved in here with a almost 3-year-old, and actually had my son in here in 1972. And that was very hard, bringing him up because he was a little monkey. One particular time I remember is he came in from the back and he'd been in the men's urinals and he was sucking a channel block from the men's urinals. So it was quite hazardous for a small child. Yeah, my husband was he was a very popular landlord. He was hail fellow well met, generous to a fault, which was probably one of the reasons we didn't make very much money while we had it. Our best day ever in the Lamb and Flag was Jubilee Day, 1977, when we took in a day what we'd have probably taken in 2.5 weeks. We were open all day, nearly all night. We could never have a peaceful Sunday morning because the vicar, regular as clockwork, would knock on the back door at 9:45 and come for his stiff gin and mix before he took morning service. I don't think the congregation ever found out.
There were 7 pubs in the parish. 5 of them were actually in the village, 2 on the outskirts. 7 because the village was full of people that made their work at home, cobblers, farmers, shopkeepers. It was a vibrant village. Apart from going there to have a bit of ale, many people took their pewter jugs and took their cider or beer back home. But also I know on 1 or 2 pubs they also had a resident doctor on a certain day of the week, as well as other social clubs who used to meet in these pubs. They've been here a long time, since all the 7 pubs have been here since the 1800s. The pub that still exists is the Mason's Arms. The other pubs in the village were the Lamb and Flag and the Crown and the Star Inn. The Star Inn was opposite our local parish church. The Crown Inn is on the road out of the village to Rowcliffe and Boroughbridge and is very close to the Mechanics Institute. The 3 that were more outlying, one was the Anchor, which was on the road out to Boroughbridge and Rowcliffe. But the 2 ones on the major road were the Coach and Horses and the Dove Inn.
I used to live in this house as a small child, and we moved here when I was 2. And I remember the Star pub quite well. It was always a big building at the end of the road, and I remember there was a Mrs. Brown and a Miss Mears, and they used to be at the pub. But I do remember it closing, and I do remember the building being knocked down, which was probably, I would think, the early 60s. I think I was about 4 when that happened. But when it came down, it was quite a big job, and they actually put buttresses there and there. Well, there's 3 there against the wall, so that the end wall wouldn't fall down. So where I'm walking now, in parallel to the house, that the actual building was quite a big building, and it would go to about here. So that left that much road. You could just about get a tractor through it. I can remember when I was little as well, and I've been told that a GP would come from Ripon every week and do a surgery. So if you were unwell or if you wanted medicines, then you would go to the Star and see your GP. And also round the back, it was quite interesting because we had the cobbled yard, but there was a two-storey building round the back, which was a grain store, Mr. Rose's grain store, and there was steps going up to a door, which was quite common in those times. And on those steps, enormous rats, huge rats, great big things. And if you went round there quite quietly, you would catch them, and then they'd scurry away. I also have a family connection with the Anchor Inn, which is the last building as you go down on the Rowcliffe Road. And the Anchor Inn was a pub from 1700s right the way through to probably the late 1800s. And from then on was just a building. It wasn't run as a pub after that. I think it was a pub that provided a service, provided beer and things for the corn mill workers, the flax mill workers. And my grandparents, George and Maggie, they moved there in 1910. But Grandad used to get gravel and sand from the gravel pit, and that was just sited just to the left of Strawberry Cottage. So he would go up there with his little trailer and his horse and fill the trailer with gravel and sand, and then he used to wheel it across the road and put it onto his barge. There was then the cut, what was called the cut, which was a canal that went down onto the River Ure.
The history, as far as I know it, is that it was built in around about the late 1700s as a pub. This part here is the pub as such that was built in that period. From the pipe that way, there was an extension which was put in Victorian times, which was actually an abattoir. The thought of that is rather horrendous because it's now our dining room. It closed in 1959 as a public house, but at some time during its history it was a hotel. The landlady, when it was closed and prior to that, was a lady called Polly Stubbs, and she had a little bit of I think she was a character, and she was supposed, albeit I don't believe it, and I think a lot of other people don't believe it, but she was supposed maybe to water the beer. The beer cellar was semi-subterranean and all done out in York stone, and it had an area built up where the beer barrels went, and they just poured the beer out from a tap. They didn't have hand pulls in those days. And there was also a tap in there, and it was always thought that she possibly went, but I don't believe that.
This is the site of the Dove Inn. We're on the A61 at the top of Dove Hill, and this is the turning on our left to Burton Leonard. All we can see is this wall and quite a large copse of trees. That's all that's left of the pub and all of its outbuildings. Doesn't exist anymore, no outbuildings, it all got burnt down. The other outlying pub in the parish of Bishop Monkton was on the A61 called the Coach and Horses, and was again built in the mid-1800s. That was a major coaching route before the Lees to Thirst Railway, and it came out of Ripon. It had a large number of outbuildings so that horses and carriages could be stored, and the pub was quite sizable, so a lot of people stopped there. Both pubs were used quite often on a Sunday because in Ripon City it was a dry city, so many came out to enjoy the refreshments of the coach and horses and the Dove Inn behind me.
For a few days we did have a pseudo eighth pub, the Horse and Groom, which was quite an interesting few days. The Masons became the Horse and Groom, which of course was quite clearly labelled over there. It was Frost, David Jason, and all of his cast were along the front here. We live at the back of the car park, and the first almost we knew of it was looking down into the car park, and all of these fitters, carpenters. It was the car park was full of people producing props for the show. And then obviously we saw the recording, we saw them going up and down. One or two village people, I think, came in as extras. And I think the draw was really they had a pub and they had a Ford. And a key part of the show was the car rolling down the road rather quickly and obviously speeded up, and then splashing down through the Ford. And of course the village is so well situated because you have the beck running through. It was August bank holiday, about 1992, something 93, something around there. And it was just a bank holiday barbecue. The village likes to party, likes to have a bit of fun. And it was quite interesting because my own feeling is that it was a prelude to something that happens now on a more regular basis. We have a hog roast every May bank holiday, early bank holiday. And I think what happened then was sort of the prelude to this. A lot of these various events, either sort of the barbecues or let's say Jubilee type events, we're fortunate that a lot of them were filmed, or part of them were filmed. Eddie Bowes in particular. Eddie was a wonderful guy. He had recorded them on video. VE Day, there were several events put on in the village. Probably the two main ones were one, the WI Hall, the old WI Hall, was set up as a wartime hall. And then of course there was the Lamb and Flag, where there was a big fancy dress. Well, I can just see myself on the edge of the eye. For quite a few years, this would have been in about the 1990s, the York and Ainsty Hunt would meet for their initial gathering outside the Lamb and Flag for their stirrup cup. And I think Sandra and Garth were the landlady and landlord at the time, and Sandra can be seen bringing the stirrup cup out.
It's always been welcoming with a very eclectic mix of people who even over the years have changed, but there's always been that variety in terms of people's backgrounds and interests and occupations, and that's always meant that we've had a healthy debate just about mirroring everything that's been going on in the world, sport, news, politics, with lots of very interesting perspectives. Well, the rear corridor of the pub has always affectionately been known as the back passage, and Trevor's back passage, and it will be so forevermore in the minds of those who've been patrons here. Many years ago there was a regular Sunday quiz, which was always a lot of fun. The teams that were congregating in the back passage would name themselves a whole variety of strange group names, which of course when read out would be the whatevers in Trevor's back passage.
In the early 70s, when there was a 3-day week, and power went off at random, everyone used to come here with their children because there was always a fire going, so children were happy, everyone was warm, and the landlord at the time, Mike Quinn, made the mistake of leaving the light switches on. So when the power came back and the lights went on, everyone went home.
And I said hello to the landlord. I said, I've just moved in, whereabouts? Down the road in rental close. And he said, oh, Lower Bishop Monkton. And that was my first memory of the Lamb and Flag.
Sitting outside the Lamb and Flag and seeing 6 monks get out of a taxi, which we perfectly formed monks, perfectly sorted out haircuts. They were the assistants to the St Wilfrid's parade, the St Wilfrid being a regular of the Lamb and Flag. This was somewhat disconcerting.
We see our friends here, and it's always very friendly, yeah, and has always been, actually, ever since we came. We've been here 48 years, so yeah, it's been a real village pub.
When you consider that a tiny village like Bishop Monkton used to have 7 pubs, it's hard to believe now, but times have changed. We're very lucky in this village to have such a fantastic community, and the pub plays a very big part in that, so long may that continue.
But yeah, it's a good place for people to come and relax, just to wind down, let the hair down, catch up, and gossip, and do what people do. I think it's really important that people do need to support them, and I think if you look around, it's a shame that there's so many villages now without pubs.